Have you ever wondered what causes somebody to suddenly push away in relationships, especially when things seem to be going very well? Well, as you might know, this is quite common for a dismissive avoidant attachment style. Somebody who is an attachment style that generally grows up with a good amount of emotional neglect, causing them to repress and reject their own emotions in childhood in order to cope with that neglect, which in turn causes them to want to push other people away as adults because they also assume that there will be neglect in their relationships. And because of this, dismissive avoidant attachment styles in particular, being one of four major attachment styles, the others being securely attached, the anxious attachment style, the one who's sort of anxious in relationships, and the fearful avoidant, the one who tends to grow up with a lot of chaos and often trauma, we'll often see that the dismissive avoidant carries a lot of toxic dating stories. These stories sit in the subconscious mind of the dismissive avoidant and act as saboteurs to the relationships once they form an attachment with other individuals. And in this video today, we are going to break down the difference between the conscious and subconscious mind. We will talk about these different stories that the dismissive avoidant in particular picks up in their childhood. And we will talk about how these stories function and an exercise that we can do in 3 steps to help uproot some of these different stories in a person's adult life. So, really excited to share this with you today. If you're new here, my name is Thais. I'm the founder of the Personal Development School, and I worked in a very busy client-based practice for 10 years or so, and then transformed into the Personal Development School space, put a lot of online content together for our students on a regular basis, and videos on here. So if you enjoy this video today, consider subscribing to this channel. I put daily content out here to help just teach about the subconscious mind, how to really recondition and reprogram, as well as how to heal our attachment style. So first and foremost, I think one of the biggest things that we have to sort of dig into here is the difference between the conscious and subconscious mind. So I'll actually share a quick little slide here for you. So, if you imagine this iceberg diagram here, you will see that we have the tip of the iceberg basically being the conscious mind and everything beneath being the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is sort of the logical thinking self. So if you can imagine the times that you say things like, I really want to make sure that I go to the gym after work, and then you find yourself sabotaging. Or if you tell yourself the story that, I really want to stop procrastinating, or I want to learn to follow through better, or I want to get, a handle on my relationship to anger. And then you procrastinate, or you get angry, or you don't follow through better in your life. This is the difference. This is really exemplifying the difference between the conscious and subconscious mind. So your conscious mind can logically want something, can analyze something, can conceive of something, but your subconscious mind is your pattern self, basically. And we carry a lot of these patterns from earlier things that we picked up in childhood. Now, in particular, I just want to say that most insecure attachment styles have toxic dating stories. And I know toxic is a strong word, but I mean in the sense that, we have these narratives and ideas or concepts that we picked up from painful things that we were affected by in childhood. Because we tend to store pain in the subconscious mind and sort of keep it close to us, right? And there's a survival reason for this. Like if you can sort of imagine for a moment that you're going out into the world and you're in a forest and you see a bear, and the bear chases you and you get away, but you have to walk back down the same path in the forest the very next day. You're not going to really be focused on remembering what the pretty tree or the pretty little flower looked like next to the bear. You're going to remember the bear and where it was standing and what it looked like in its teeth. So we tend to store negative things a little bit more strongly because by doing that, we can protect ourselves from survival threats. However, we often aren't exposed to that many survival threats in today's world. So instead, we store these really painful events from childhood strongly, and we basically assume that they will occur again. This is not a conscious process. We don't consciously choose that. We don't think, oh, I would love to have my childhood repeat, and this time I'm prepared. We assume, we just literally, without even thinking about it, assume that negative things will repeat again. You can see this in the anxious attachment style who fears abandonment. And, they're not choosing to be afraid of abandonment. They just fear it. Or the fearful avoidant, who can also fear abandonment or fear betrayal. Then they tend to be suspicious. They're not choosing. They're not thinking, oh, I can't wait to be suspicious today. They show up that way with their hypervigilance sometimes. So with their dismissive avoidant attachment style, you'll tend to see that the dismissive avoidant has these different stories and narratives they pick up from their subconscious mind. Now, in particular, you can sort of imagine that your conscious mind's at 3% above the surface, 3 to 5%, and your subconscious is everything beneath the surface. 95 to 97% of our patterns exist within there. Our memories, our belief patterns, our thought patterns, our emotional patterns, our actions and behaviors really come from that programmed self. So, you can imagine as well, I put these two little pictures here. If you look at this little picture with the glasses, that's there for a reason. The idea here is that you're basically looking through the lens of these glasses, and it's coloring the way that you see your world. Obviously, these are like our rose colored glasses, but they're not always rose colored. Oftentimes they're not so pretty colored. And in this case, we can think of our subconscious programs as actually being the lens that we see and interact with the world through. So if I grew up as a fearful avoidant and I thought, okay, relationships are about chaos, then I'll actually see relationships through that lens. I'll expect relationships to be chaos. I may even create the chaos if I'm not consciously aware of this and if I'm not doing the work to become secure, right? So it really begs this sort of important question of, well, what chaos or what painful experiences as a dismissive avoidant are did you experience, and are you still living and seeing and interacting with the world through? And generally the ones that exist there for dismissive avoidant attachment styles as a whole are things like this assumption that you will get neglected again. So the assumption that your needs won't be met and I will be helpless. This idea that I am weak if I express my emotions or if I attach too deeply or I'm too vulnerable. Another idea can be that I am trapped in a relationship if I start to let my guard down, and sort of this assumption that I'll be trapped in relationships where my needs are not getting met, because that's often how dismissive avoidants experience their childhood. So not only are these programs that sort of exist beneath the surface, like in this iceberg diagram, but they're the way that we see and view and expect our partners to be in our interactions, to be in relationships. They literally color the way that we see and interact with the world. So what happens is, as long as you have these dynamics where you assume neglect, assume your needs won't be met, feel unsafe in relationships because of that, feel trapped or weak if you are vulnerable or if you attach to somebody, all of a sudden, as soon as you start making this attachment, as soon as you start actually fusing yourself together with somebody else, you start really connecting to somebody. Well, now all of a sudden, these stories are going to arise, which is going to cause a dismissive avoidant attachment style to need to pull away seemingly out of the blue. So we're going to do an exercise here together, but I want you to just take a moment and notice first, whether it's you as the dismissive avoidant or a loved one of a dismissive avoidant. And I want you to ask yourself the question, what stories exist in my subconscious mind? What are the painful things I'm afraid of when I start getting close to somebody? And just by noticing these things, or if you think that you're watching this video for a partner, for a loved one, I want you to ask yourself, what do I think that they're afraid of? And in fact, this may be a really powerful conversation to have in a relationship. What are your ultimate fears once you get close to somebody? Because until we actually clear out these fears, until we learn to communicate and express them to ourselves first, and then in relationships with others, and come up with strategies for how to avoid them, we are going to keep being at the mercy of them because we don't even realize they're running our lives, right? We already have the glasses on. We can't even differentiate or see that there's a separation between us and these stories. So we're going to do this exercise here together at the bottom. So I want you to ask yourself, when you get into close relationships, what are you afraid could happen? What's the worst case scenario or set of scenarios that you're afraid of? And again, I put some examples here. You may be afraid that you will eventually be trapped, or you will feel powerless, or the relationship will be full of fighting and you'll feel unsafe. So I want you to really take some time to assess and try to even look back at where do these fears come from in my childhood? And if you are dismissive avoidant or avoidant at all, fearful avoidant included in this, when you do pull away, what are you really trying to protect yourself against? And what you'll see is it's usually not your partner or the person that you're in a situation with. It's usually these old subconscious fears that you've been living in and with that you're basically assuming onto your current relationship. So no wonder, it feels so unsolvable. No wonder things tend to be really, really difficult. Now, I'm going to share with you point number 3 here. This is sort of our way out, but I will say I'm just going to cover this part at a high level. I have other reprogramming videos on this channel, but I also have a really powerful course you can check out fully for free just for a limited time called 21 Ways to Reprogram Your Subconscious Mind. I'll put the link in the description below, but it's all about how to actually recondition these fears because we're not born with them. They get conditioned into us over time through repetition and emotion, which is a big function of how the subconscious mind is programmed. And we can actually recondition them sort of under those same principles. So I want you to ask yourself the question in point number 3 here, can I actually start checking in to see if these stories are really true? So if I'm believing that I'm going to be trapped in this relationship, am I with a partner who currently shows up that way, who's going to trap me and never care about my needs? Or is there evidence to actually support that I could communicate my needs and this person would want to get want to show up and meet my needs? And I could actually get my needs met. Or if you have this idea that like I'm going to be unsafe in the relationship, can you really know that that's going to be the case? In fact, is there evidence to support that this person's a safe partner to have in a relationship? Because the real injustice exists when we believe these things, we push people away, but we were pushing people away because of our old fears we were projecting onto them rather than because of this person's actual behaviors. And usually this will end with dismissive avoidance kind of feeling like they lost somebody or that person was the one that got away. And so, we have to be able to really question and try to equilibrate these stories by finding counteracting pieces of evidence. When we do this consistently enough, it's actually a form of reconditioning because we're refiring and wiring new neural pathways and old stories, old sort of neural pathways and ways that we're used to looking at the world, they atrophy over time if we're not refeeding them. So we can actually replace these concepts, these painful sort of toxic dating stories that we have that can be wreaking havoc on our lives and relationships. And we can actually replace them with much healthier perspectives. But we have to do this work consistently so that we can fire and wire new results. So hopefully this gives you some insight into really why dismissive avoidant attachment styles pull away, what some of their different toxic dating stories may be, and some actionable steps that you can take to start transforming these things in your life beginning today. Also, if you enjoyed this video and you want to do a deeper dive into reprogramming, you can check out that course fully for free for a limited time down below. And let me know any other questions you have, comments, anything like that down below in the comment section as well. I will definitely check them out and read through them, especially if there's any other future content that you would like to see or exercises that you want some support around. And thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any of our content. And I can't wait to see you in future videos.